of politicians as business leaders, as political leaders, are actually women. So that's another tone that we would like to sort of bring into this conversation, is how they manage to actually get there. Barack Obama, who is a great communicator, and I'm a great fan of his in terms of how he connects with people, I will just drop a phrase there because that will resonate throughout this session. And he used two phrases. One of them is that we should have the courage and the audacity to hope. But he coupled that and he said, it must be with the fierce urgency of now. We just dwell on that. You must have hope, but with the urgency of now. And I think what we're going to try and do in terms of our practical examples is talk about that urgency of now. Now, just to end this opening session, I'll share something very personal with you, because I think that makes us human, and hopefully we can connect with that. I spoke about role models, and I'll share one person who inspired me at an early stage of my life. And whenever I'm in trouble, I think of that person and the inspiration that she has provided so many people. This lady actually was from Pakistan. She died about 5 years ago. And throughout her life, I mean, she became blind at the age, I think she was in her early 30s, and she lost her sight. Interestingly enough, she became far more successful when she lost sight than she ever was before. She was a doctor of medicine, so she actually had a skill and a qualification. But what she did was, after she became blind, she basically then decided that I have to do something with this. And she started working, obviously, in charity and social development and so on. But one of her very famous stories is that she was working with the United Nations. In the end, she ended up as Under Secretary General of the United Nations. And this is about 40 years ago. And she had this inspiration of creating eye hospitals. You know, those flying hospitals where, you know, you can go into places, and simple operations of cataract and so on. But here she was, a blind lady, working in the United Nations. How does she make this thing happen? And she decided one day to get on a plane with some of her colleagues and go to Boeing aeroplanes. And obviously their corporate social responsibility people were all hovering around her and sort of, you know, wanted to give them donations and so on. But she said, I don't want any donations. I said, well, how can we help you? What would you like? And she said, I want 2 Boeing 737s, please. She said, excuse me? What are you talking about? She thought she just lost it. You know, after losing her eyesight, she probably lost some of her brain cells. So they were trying to they were very embarrassed, because she was going to meet the CEO of Boeing, and she said, I want 2 737s, please. What? And they said, what do you want this for? And she said, well, I have this vision. And she said, when I lost my sight, that's when I could see. I have this vision to go and empower people all over the world with the gift of sight. And I want 2 planes. I'm going to fit them all up. I have all of these doctors who have volunteered. I will be there myself, and I will go. And guess what? After she met the CEO, she walked out 2 hours later with 2 Boeing 737s that were leased to her in perpetuity. With those 2 planes, she fundamentally changed the lives of people in Latin America, in Africa, and so on. The reason I'm giving you this example is, even though you lose your eyesight, even though you have total despair in front of you, you don't lose hope, and more importantly, you don't lose vision. This lady, her name is Dr. Fatma Qureshi. She died, I think, about 4 or 5 years ago. She's actually one of my dad's cousins, and they were good friends. And even to the day she died, she had language of sight. So when she used to touch my face, she used to say, oh, you're looking fine. Never you feel fine. So her language always remained like that. And whenever I'm down, whenever I'm in difficulty, I do think about role models like her. And I hope our panel will share some of those with us. So that was my personal story. I hope it made some sense. Right, so I actually need a mic because I can't stand behind here, and I can certainly not work from the back with talking to Asad from here. Can somebody help me with a hand mic? Or is that not going to be possible? It's not going to be possible? Sorry, I should have asked this question before. Ji. Thank you. Right, so now I can come out from here, because that's very scary back there. I'm going to start with Asad, and I would like to just set the tone right at the beginning from a corporate side. Asad, you're the president of Engro. You have thousands and thousands of people working for you. What fundamental things do you see at this moment in time which is defining the role of women and women in leadership, in your organizations in particular, and in corporate life in general?
Right. Let's look at it in terms of what have been the impediments which have blocked women from developing in the corporate world and getting a greater share of the leadership positions. A good quarter of a century after a lot of women entered business schools. My class, I am class of 84 IBA, was 1/3 women. My wife is class of 86 and they were 40% women. But when I look at the leadership positions around the country and I look at Engro as well, I see very, very few women in there. And there are three things which primarily act as impediments. And I'll talk in terms of increasing difficulty of addressing them. So I'll start with the easiest one first. The first one is simply infrastructure facilities. Daycare centers can make a significant difference in allowing women to be able to continue to work while they go through that period where the children are very young. Very few companies have invested in it. We have only just recently invested in it. So 40 years of our existence, we didn't do it. Transportation, especially for the low-income workers who are going to come in, is much more of an issue. I know most of us don't use public transport, but even when we did, when we were younger, the public transport experience is a very different experience for men versus what it is for women. It can be harrowing. So that's another one. I was having a talk with some of the girls in the office, and simple things like we moved into a new office and the car park is not well lit. And while security is an issue for both men and women, it's obviously a much bigger issue so when they sit late, that security threat becomes. So a lot of these infrastructure things need to be looked at, and you've got to make the place more physically easier to access and work in for women. The second one relates to work-life balances. It's a biological fact of life that women will bear children, and no matter how much any of us would like to change it, and I certainly don't want that change, it's the women who are going to bear children, right? And they'll go through a phase in life where the 9 to 6, 5 days in a week or 6 days a week regimen is simply not possible. If you look at the graduating age for most people who are even coming out with master's degree in engineering or business or whatever, or becoming accountants, they're going to be in their mid-20s, right? The retirement age norm these days is 60. Most people continue to work till they're 70. So you're looking at a 35 to 45-year cycle. And if in that cycle, if the average working woman is going to have 2 children and probably no more than that, or even if she has 3 children, and there is a 2-year cycle in there or 3-year cycle in there, you're talking of less than 1/4 of their total life cycle in which you need to make things easier. Technology has already made it much easier with laptops, Blackberries, Wi-Fi, cell phones.